Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video, we are going to be talking about loose incense, what it is, what different varieties are there, and how you can use it within your personal practice. So to start all of that off, what is a loose incense and what makes it different from any other form of incense? Well, the most popular forms of incense that you will find on normal shops and on the market typically are stick incense and cone incense. These are often mass-produced and they often contain a lot of synthetic items, synthetic fragrances, synthetic dyes, and so on and so on. Loose incense is a loose form of incense. It isn't in a shape like a cone and it isn't attached to a stick like stick incense is. Instead, loose incense is a powdered or ground form of incense that isn't self-igniting, so it is a little bit more difficult to use. So what do I mean by self-igniting? Well, typically stick and cone incenses contain charcoal or other ingredients that make them self-igniting. So all you have to do is light it with a lighter or with a match or off a candle and it will burn and it will continue to burn as you burn down the incense. They're often very easy for people to use even without any experience of using incense. I'm sure you can figure out how to use a stick or cone incense. They have an ingredient in them that causes them to burn. Loose incense is often different. It isn't self-igniting. It doesn't contain those ingredients that cause it to burn by itself. And so instead it needs an external heat source constantly for you to be able to use them effectively. So while with an incense stick, you can light the end with a lighter, let it smolder and then blow it out and it will continue to burn down. With loose incenses, you need heat constantly to get the fragrance and to get the energetic effects of those loose incenses. So that's the main difference between the two. They are in a different packaging, they're often done in a different way, so they are very finely powdered or ground, and they have to have a constant source of heat in order to ignite. Whereas stick and cone incense will ignite by itself and continue to burn, and it does come in a form that allows it to be burned relatively easily. So those are the differences between loose incense and normal incense. But what are the different varieties of loose incense? So there are a lot of different varieties, but there are two main categories that I'm going to be talking about today. The first is the powdered loose incense. Now, a lot of the time, powdered loose incense is only manufactured by larger companies, as it is exceptionally time-consuming in order to create. The one that I have here is a powerful Indian steady work powdered loose incense. Now, these are often manufactured by companies, as I said, because it is a very fine powder. You actually can't even tell that's a powder, it just looks like a green blob. But that is exceptionally fine incense powder. Now, this form of incense powder is often similar to what you would find in cones and in incense sticks. And so you can actually form incense cones out of this type of incense powder. You simply compress it into a cone and it's so fine it can actually stay in shape for you to then burn it like a standard cone incense, or you can burn it on a charcoal disc for a more even burn. Now, this form of loose incense, you often don't know what goes into it. It doesn't look like any herb I have ever seen. It's instead often just a uniform colour of powder. You don't really know what's in it. A lot of the time they are dyed with synthetic dyes and they are fragranced with synthetic fragrances. Now, that isn't inherently a bad thing, because a lot of the incenses that we typically burn day to day, the stick and cone incense that we buy regularly is fragranced with synthetic fragrances and it's dyed with synthetic dyes. But this type of incense, you don't really know what's in it. Very few companies actually tell you what the ingredients are. So is it just scented for the intention and coloured for the intention, or are there actual herbal ingredients in there to help manifest that intention? It's a little bit unclear. It's quite an unusual form of loose incense. You mainly find these in botanicas over in the States, whereas here in England, this is really, really unusual to find. So that's one variety of loose incense. The other variety of loose incense is what I would refer to as natural loose incense or herbal loose incense. Now this is what most people will associate with herbal incenses. Now this is one that I created for the January mystery box. This is the meditation incense that some of you will have gotten in little sachets in your box. And it looks like this. Now, as you can see, there are obvious pieces of herb in there. In fact, there is nothing but herbs in there. Herbs, resins, flowers, woods, and powders are in there. It's all natural. There's no synthetic fragrance, there's no synthetic ingredients. So a lot of the loose incense that you can buy from smaller retailers, like me for instance, or Star Child in Glastonbury, there's lots of other places that sell it, they will create loose incense based on herbal recipes where all of the herbs are associated with the intention involved. So you know that everything going into it is not only to bring a really nice fragrance, but also to add a lot of intention into spell work, rituals, or just day-to-day life. Now the big difference between this incense and the very powdered incense is that you can tell what's in it. Unfortunately, in incenses like this, no shame to them, I can't tell what's in that. I can't look at it and go, well, there's sage and there's rosemary. Instead, it's all just one uniform colour of a powder of some form. Whereas in these, in natural or herbal loose incenses, you can tell exactly what's in there. You can tell there's a resin. Obviously, I know what that resin is, but someone else might not. You can tell there's a resin, you can tell there's some flowers, you can tell there's some herbs. There's nothing in there that isn't natural. It's all either organic, or it's homegrown, or it's bought in from reputable sources. I know that it's all natural ingredients that have been added in for the purpose of meditation, for this incense specifically. So that's really the two big differences in loose incense varieties. You often find they are either powdered loose incense, which often is just a uniform colour. They're often more mass produced. They can smell really nice. It smells more like traditional incense, which some people would really appreciate. And then you have the herbal or natural loose incense, which is created just from herbs, powdered and ground, and it has a very herbal scent. And if you aren't used to burning loose incense, it can smell very different from what you would expect incense to smell like. Now, the one thing that is the same between these two is that they are not self-igniting, so you are going to have to use them in the same ways. Now, where can you find loose incense? It's quite difficult to find in general shops. You can't really go into a gift shop and find loose incense. So what are you looking for? If you want to buy loose incense, you can often find it online in small online shops or in Etsy stores. But of course, you're not going to know what it smells like unless you see it in person. So if you are interested in looking into loose incense and want to smell it first, it's worth checking around your local occult shops, your local botanicas, to see if they have any loose incense that you can smell beforehand. For me, I typically make all of my loose incense, or I will buy it from a company called Star Child down in Glastonbury. There's lots and lots of different shops that sell it. You can definitely make it yourself, or you can support someone else in making it based on their recipes. But a lot of the time, you're not just going to find it in your typical store. So it's something that you might want to go to a local mind, body and spirit show, a witchcraft fair, a paganism fair, or something similar, where you can go and talk to people that might make it and smell it for yourself, or go into your local botanica or your occult shop and see if they do any loose incense in there. Now, it's typically packaged in several different ways. The packages that you often find in botanicas looks a little like this. They are usually cardboard containers with a little plastic lid, and they often have images like this on the front. Now, this is a powerful Indian brand, but a lot of the other brands do look relatively similar. If it is a natural herbal incense, you'll often find that they come in little glass jars, or they might come in little sachets for smaller quantities. So that's kind of what you're looking for if you want to get it for yourself. So how do you burn loose incense? Now, I am planning on doing a whole separate video showing you physically how I burn loose incense. Unfortunately, I couldn't get this done for this video, but there is going to be a video coming soon where I actually walk you through a step-by-step visual of how to burn loose incense and the different ways that you can use it. So if that's what you're interested in, feel free to stick around on the channel, and hopefully that video will be up soon if it isn't up already. So there's lots of different ways to burn loose incense, and there's also lots of different ways to use loose incense. But what most people want to know is how to burn it. So typically you burn loose incense in one of two ways. You either burn it in a confined container on a charcoal disc. Now, charcoal discs can be found pretty readily at occult stores, botanicas, as well as on Etsy, on eBay, on Amazon, and pretty much anywhere on the internet. You can pretty readily find them. Typically, they come in packs of 10, and they are really easy and effective to use. Now, I do want to say that if you are going to be burning loose incense inside, please always do it in a well-ventilated space. Charcoal, when it's burning, does release carbon monoxide, and that isn't something you want to be breathing in. So make sure you are either outside or in a well-ventilated area. Trust me on this one, you don't want to have to deal with the side effects of that. Always make sure you do it in a well-ventilated space. Now, the basis behind using a charcoal disc is that you are creating its own little confined energy source. You are going to be putting the incense onto that heated disc to ignite the incense. So first things first, you're going to need a container. Now, the ones that I personally recommend are heat-proof cast iron containers, ideally something like a cauldron. Now, I mainly use cauldrons for this because I know that they are safe to do so. You can also use containers that are designed for high intensity heat, because charcoal discs can burn over 1,000 degrees C. So I would not recommend doing this on any surface or in a container that isn't exceptionally fire and heat resistant. You do not want your dish exploding while you are doing this. Now, ideally, you're also going to want a protective layer in the bottom of that dish. So I will often use sand. I'll use kids' play sand. It's really readily available at things like Argos, and often supermarkets in the summer will have this kids' play sand. You don't need much. You just need a little layer at the bottom of your dish in order to do this safely. So next, I would recommend using a pair of charcoal tongs, which are essentially designed just to grab hold of charcoal. You're going to want to hold that charcoal disc in between the tongs, and using a lighter or a match, you're going to want to light that disc, hold the heat on it for about 30 to 60 seconds until it starts to pop and crackle. Believe me, you are not going to be able to miss this sound when it starts. And then once it's popping and crackling and it's doing it consistently, you can then place that charcoal disc into the dish on top of the sand. Now, when that disc begins to go grey on the edges, you can then begin sprinkling your incense on top. Now, loose incense is exceptionally potent. You don't need very much at all. Just a tiny pinch is enough to create a decent amount of smoke. You don't want to smoke yourself out. Just a little bit is enough to do it. And that's one of the bonuses of loose incense, is that a little tiny bit goes a really long way. So you buying a tub this size, you may never end up using all of that unless you use it really, really frequently. So it does last an exceptionally long amount of time, which is a positive in my book when it comes to buying incense. It means that I don't have to keep buying it again and again and again. So once you've sprinkled that loose incense onto the charcoal disc, it will begin to smoke. And this is why you need to use a really small amount, because a little bit goes a really, really long way. And also, please be careful if you have any pets or young children in the property while you're doing this, if you're doing it inside, because our lungs might be perfectly fine coping with a little bit of loose incense, but something like a bird or a small rodent, even a cat and a dog, they might struggle a lot more with the smoke. So please make sure to do this with care if you do have pets and children or people with breathing issues in the property. I know that I'm giving you a bunch of disclaimers, but it's because I want you guys to stay safe. I really, really do. So once you've got this loose incense on the charcoal disc, it will begin to smoke. And loose incense typically doesn't burn for that long. You're probably looking at maybe 15 minutes per kind of sprinkle. But for a lot of the time, that's all you need to get the fragrance, and that's all you need for a spell work and ritual. And then, if you want to, you can add a little bit more onto that charcoal disc and it will start to burn again. It will smolder, so the resins will begin to liquefy and smoke will begin to rise. It doesn't so much burn, it just more smolders. It simmers a little bit. And if you don't want to use any more loose incense, you simply have to leave it. Don't touch it, don't go near it, just leave it until it goes cold. Now, I will say another disclaimer, I know I'm full of disclaimers in this video, that if you're using something metal or something that's going to take in heat, it can take several hours for that item to go cold. So please always take care. Never pick up a container that has a burning charcoal disc in it, and also leave it for several hours afterwards so you don't hurt yourself. And then you can mush that powdered charcoal disc, because at this point it will have turned into ash, into the sand, and then you can just use another one the next time you want to use loose incense. So that is one technique that's typically done for more indoor rituals, sometimes smaller outdoor rituals as well. But if you're going to be doing it inside, another disclaimer, please always take care, make sure it's well ventilated. Always be careful when using loose incense inside. Now, another technique of using loose incense is much more suitable for doing it inside, and that is by using it on an incense warmer. Now, you can use this on a specifically designed item called an incense warmer. Often they are a dish that you put a tea light inside, and then there is a mesh sitting on top. You light the tea light, and then you sprinkle your loose incense onto the mesh on top. Now, that device is much more suited to the chunkier natural incenses than the very finely powdered loose incense. So it's definitely more suited to the natural resins, the natural herbs, than it is to this kind of synthetic powder type stuff. The other way of doing it is to use it on an oil warmer, which is suitable for both options of loose incense, as there are no holes in it. And essentially, rather than burning the loose incense, you're releasing the fragrance, which is a really great way of doing it if you are sensitive to smoke, and also if you have pets and children. It's a really good alternative. It allows you to heat up that incense so you can get the fragrance, you can work with the herbs and the resins and the flowers, or you can simply work with the intention and the fragrance. And then you aren't wasting the incense by burning it super quickly, but instead you can use it as a slow burning item. Now, I really like doing it this way. You can see it kind of simmer in the top, and it kind of releases steam and vapor, especially if you're using the herbal loose incense. And you can keep this up for several hours on end, for as long as a tea light stays lit. You can keep doing this to add fragrance into the space and into the room or the ritual or the spell work. And it's a really good alternative way of using it because it means there's no smoke produced. It's not quite as hazardous as burning loose incense on a charcoal disc. So it can be a really good alternative, especially if you live with other people, if you have pets, if you have small children, if you don't have the ability to open all of the windows in your entire house. It's a really good option to use. Now, the third way of burning loose incense is typically done outside and especially on special occasions, and that is on open fires, typically bonfires or ritual fires. You will find people burning loose incense. Now, there's several different techniques for this. Some people will simply cast a handful into the fire and let it smoke. Other people will do it more ceremonially, and they will write a petition of what they want to achieve. They will put some of that loose incense in the center. They will gather it up, twist the top, and then toss it into a fire. Often this is done on fire pits or controlled fires. Please don't start setting fires randomly in order to do this. Do it safely in a fire pit. It's the best way of doing it. And then you cast your petition and your intention into the fire along with the incense that relates to what it is you want to manifest. And that's another way of doing it. It's often done in group ceremonies. It's often done at Sabbath celebrations. There's lots of different times people do this. this. I did this as an SBAT celebration once and it was really, really nice. I really enjoyed doing it this way. And it's an alternative way of using loose incense that a lot of people maybe don't think of. Now, there are lots of other ways to use loose incense, more in a witchcraft scenario than a scent scenario. So I'm going to put all of those in a separate video for anyone who wants to use their loose incense in alternative ways. Don't necessarily involve burning it, but maybe involve some more occulty, witchcrafty topics. So stick around for that one. I didn't want to put it in this video just in case there were loads of people that were really not into the witchcrafty stuff and just wanted to know how to use loose incense, because those tend to be two categories of people. There are the people in the middle that want both, but there are definitely people who don't want to use the witchcraft stuff, so I'm going to put that in a separate video for those guys. Now, how do you make loose incense? What actually goes into it? I get a lot of questions about this. I will probably, once again, be doing a full video on making loose incense, as in physically watching me make loose incense, so you know kind of the process that goes into it, but it is something that you can make yourself if you want to. Stick incense, cone incense tends to be a little bit beyond people's abilities. It's a little bit more complicated, trying to get it to all stick together and stick to a stick, like it's a little bit more difficult. Loose incense, especially herbal loose incense, is a lot easier to create. It essentially is a combination of aromatherapy and herbalism, where you blend together different notes of fragrance from different herbs of intention to create not only an incense that smells really, really nice, but an incense that burns really well for a nice amount of time and also assists in manifesting intention. It's essentially several different topics kind of all wrapped up into one. It's a really, really interesting thing. There are lots and lots of good books on the subject. Scott Cunningham has a book on loose incense. I think it's called Incense, Oils and Brews by Scott Cunningham. That's a really interesting read for anyone that's interested in making loose incense for themselves. It's definitely something that can be quite tricky, trying to get the fragrance to work alongside the burn time, to work alongside the ingredients involved. It's definitely a bit of a juggling act, but once you kind of master it, it gives you the chance to be creating your own loose incense for yourself and for you to be using it in your own magical practice. So that is just a little bit about loose incense, what it is, the different varieties, how to use it. I'm sorry that there were so many disclaimers in this video and so many "there will be another video on this" mentions in this video, but I absolutely love using loose incense and I want to be able to give you as much information in as detailed a setting as I can, hence why I'm going to be splitting some of these videos up. So there's going to be a little playlist on the different ways that you can use it, the physical visual of how you can use loose incense, and also this video on what loose incense is. So if you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. It really, really means so much to me. I have a question for you guys. If you make loose incense or if you use loose incense, what is your favorite fragrance or intention, and what is your favorite way to use it? Please let me know down in the comment section. I would love to know. I'm sure lots of other people would love to know how you use it as well. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community, down in the comment section, feel free to post a comment. And if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try to post magical content every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 p.m. So I want to say a massive thank you for all of my Patreon supporters. You guys are absolutely amazing. You really, really help to keep this channel going, and your names will be on the end screen at the end of this video. Thank you so much, really. Oh, your support means so much to me. So I hope you guys have a marvelous magical day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!